And now we're going to move on to a special guest, Dr. Roger Nelson, who actually everyone that you're going to see on the rest of tonight are one of the 17 protagonists of the movie The One Field. Dr. Roger Nelson founded the Global Consciousness Project, coordinated the research in a lab at Princeton University in the United States, and maybe you can tell us a bit more. I just want to say I'm a Jersey girl right here. Love it.
Hello.
Hello.
Very nice to
Welcome.
see you, and thank you very much for inviting me to join this group today. I have been thinking about consciousness and maybe particularly about how to measure effects of consciousness for a long time. I started working at Princeton University in the what's called PAIR Lab, Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, in 1980. That's like a century ago or forever ago. But it's been an exciting time with a lot of different kinds of insights and developments. The first experiments that I was involved in and designed had to do with um, finding out if a person could change the operation of a sensitive device just by wishing for it. And we found that that was possible. We had a variety of different kinds of machines and instruments, and a lot of volunteers, ordinary people, who would come and say, yes, I'd like to participate in these experiments. So we gave them an opportunity to make a device that produces random numbers, make high numbers or low numbers, or uh, let it alone, let it behave as it would if nobody was around. So we called that high, low, and baseline. And quite amazingly, in spite there was no wire connecting them, no touching, no normal means of affecting this device at all. And yet, by wishing for high numbers, they got high numbers. Not always, but enough so that over time we were able to show this actually happens, that a human conscious intention reaches out into the world and changes it ever so slightly. And I think that's probably the core message that I have. Your intention and your wishes, desires, and prayers are not just an abstraction. They actually exist in the world and they can change the way the world is. Maybe only slightly and maybe only some of the time. But think what it would be like if we all understood this power that we have and collaborated, cooperated together to change things so that we did not have these disasters. Uh, exactly. We are capable of things that we don't imagine. So, without spending a whole lot more time on that, the work that I developed in those days turned into what we called field REG experiments, where we literally would take a random number generator, very small by that time, connected to a tiny computer out into the field, where we hoped we could capture some indication of field consciousness. So we are almost at field, at the one field by now. But the development that I think contributes most to thinking about a one field in this on this planet or in this world is the Global Consciousness Project, which I started in 1997 and which is still running. Its formal data collection days are past, but we still are working on. We look at things like the coronavirus crisis. We take a probe, look into that to see, does this instrument we've created, I'll show you a little more about that in a moment, does it respond to something like the coronavirus crisis? The answer is yes, it does. Even though we're not designed to look at an ongoing, endless crisis like the coronavirus or even the protests over social problems like the Black Lives Matter movement. or any number of other long-lasting turmoil. We can take a probe now and then when there's a special moment. So to talk a little more about the Global Consciousness Project, I'd like to share my screen and show you some slides. So this is just a title slide, but it already touches on what the Global Consciousness Project is about, and also on the conclusion that I ultimately draw. I don't want to miss saying this. We are all connected. The connections are unconscious mostly, although when we try, we're able to make it a little less unconscious. This project is actually intended to create a scientific perspective on a question that's really spiritual in a strong sense. The question is whether we human beings are becoming a global consciousness. In order to ask that question formally, we created a hypothesis that you can see, I think, on the screen. We predict that attention and emotion that is shared by people around the world will correlate with changes in data from our network of random numbered devices. That's a formal prediction. When something big brings us all together, we expect that the data in this network, which I'll show you a picture of, that the data from our network will change, maybe only slightly, but enough so that we are distinctly able to show that as a statistical outcome or a statistical quantity. This came partly from kinds of intuitions about what Teilhard de Chardin was saying was our destiny. As human beings, we're evolved from dead particles, small creatures, eventually to a thinking, self-aware being, which we tend to think of as a kind of pinnacle of evolution. But Teilhard said, no, there's another stage. What our destiny as human beings is to become a layer of consciousness for the earth, like an atmosphere or an ionosphere, but made of knowing and capable of taking care of the earth, becoming the caring intelligence, deciding how we would do things. This map shows where all the individual devices have been located. You can see there's a great concentration in Europe and the US, but we had coverage over much of the world. And a series of formal tests show that the data tends to become correlated. And this is a picture of a highly correlated response from our network. What should happen in a presentation of data like this is a kind of level line proceeding across the extent or the time period over which we're making the test. And instead, what we see in a case like this is 6 years ago, September 21st, 2014. It's the same day that we're actually interested in now. There are all kinds of events that we look at, sometimes major violence, like the 9/11, the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. This graph should be level, but it shows a strong trend of that's not level, it's not even close. It goes on for almost 3 days. There are other ways to look at the same data, and they show us the same general impression. Something happened on that day that changed the way these devices we use behave. And one of the things that I find most compelling or enchanting about the data that we have is that when an event embodies compassion, love, and conviction, that kind of thing, we tend to see strong effects. This is the Kumbh Mela in India, which happens in the big version every 12 years and smaller versions in between. And we have been able to look at the data corresponding to 4 of these events. They all have somewhat the same kind of general trend. And when we put them all together, they become a rather persuasive display of replication. Remember, the line should go level across the black line at the bottom. This is a very strong result. One time in 1,000 would you see anything like this by chance. So that's a kind of small version of the whole experiment, which is a replication experiment. It was designed to do the same kind of experiment for event after event, things that brought people together or would bring people together in a kind of state of compassion, or maybe shared anxiety or shared anger or other kinds of emotions. But in any case, when people come together with strong emotions, we tend to see a movement in this one positive direction. By no means are all the events successes. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But here we're back to the International Peace Day again, September 21st, 2009. Here's an example where our prediction wasn't met at all. This is what random data look like. But most of the time, when we asked what happened on September 21st, we see this strong deviation in the positive direction that we predict time after time. And eventually get to this year, 1 month ago, look at it in a little bit more detail. This is a day when many, many groups around the world gathered to ask the universe for progress toward peace, progress toward that noosphere that Teilhard de Chardin was talking about, a kind of gathering of human consciousness in a coordinated way. I think I said this already, but it's worth repeating. I believe that we have evidence in this long-running experiment that there is a kind of unconscious connection among people around the world. Even if you're distant, even if you don't know the other person at some unconscious, deep level, this is very much like what the sages in all cultures have said. We are one, we are connected. And my hope is that we will gradually, maybe soon, hopefully very soon, learn to take that unconscious connection, bring it up into awareness, share with each other, become one with each other in order to take our place as the noosphere, managing things in a little bit better fashion than we've managed up to now on this earth. So thank you very much. Anybody who has questions can write to me at rdnelson@princeton.edu. Thank you.